folks, and welcome back to another edition of Money in Motion. Today's Thursday, quite a sell-off in markets today. DXY might be looking a little toppy. We'll see. Seeing a lot of talk on like financial news media outlets about DXY and just how bullish it is. Kind of reminiscent of the bottom when they were proclaiming, recent lows. Anyways, getting a bit ahead of myself. Monte, how are you doing? What's going on today?
Doing well, doing well. Like you said, some pretty serious volatility to start the day. So lots to talk about. I mean, the Nasdaq down almost 1.5%. You got ES down 0.75%, and we have just started the day. So could gonna be an interesting one. And then of course we'll dive into crypto, what this means for Bitcoin, where we see Bitcoin headed and whatnot, and what trades we're taking. So yeah, if there's anything you'd like to start with in particular, please feel free to do so. If not, I can get started with a kind of broad overview.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead with the broad overview, because I think I'm going to talk about some more specific stuff.
For sure.
Yeah, by all means.
Yeah, let's start with the Nasdaq, because we opened up down pretty hard today. Switching to the 15-minute chart quickly, just so you guys can see what the price action looks like. But this is what we're seeing. And, it looked like perhaps we were going to bounce back up and fill that gap. But immediately we were met with sell pressure as soon as we got back up, or as soon as this 15-minute candle closed. Sell pressure came back in, and we're back down towards the lows. Breaking down below this level, I think is, a great indication that we are in risk off territory. Furthermore, like CJ pointed out, the dollar does, it is ripping to the upside. That tells you everything you know about risk assets. Like, people don't want to be investing their money in the stock market right now. They're looking for that 4% yield. And the dollar can offer that safe haven. But to CJ's point, a lot of people are talking about how strong the dollar is right now, and how, it is so reminiscent of down here when they were declaring, oh, the dollar's dead. We're going to see global de-dollarization. And then sure enough, it rallies the next day. So I wouldn't be surprised to see today be overwhelmingly negative, and then tomorrow to see some relief, the dollar turn back a little bit, maybe come back down and retest, this level here at around 104. And then we can get some relief in the Nasdaq and some positive price action there. But in the meantime, I mean, just looking at this 15-minute chart, not painting the best picture for us. And the fact that we have the Nasdaq down twice as much as ES, that tells you, again, everything you need to know about where we're at from a risk on, risk off perspective. People are not looking to take risks today, and that's being reflected in some pretty negative price action in the Nasdaq, and that includes, some of our crypto related equities, things like Riot and Mara, both down over 4% today. So some pretty heavy falls in that sector as well. But Bitcoin kind of just holding steady, doing its thing. We'll see how much longer it can do that with this negative price action from the equity markets. But that's kind of my broad overview. Clearly risk off markets today. I don't think the dollar will top today, but maybe tomorrow we see a bit of reversal if there is profit taking from any bears. But I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of profit taking to be had. I think there's
this is all short covering. I don't
Yeah.
think anyone's like, oh, I'm bullish the dollar, let's invest.
That's
It's been this whole trade where people have been betting on rates going down. This is where you hear tons of people talking about buying TLT, and it just hasn't worked. But now the implication is like rates will go higher for longer, and the dollar will go up. But like the market just hasn't really, it wasn't really pricing that in earlier in the year. It was too focused on like de-dollarization and all that stuff. So
yeah, and there were a lot of other catalysts going on as well. And it feels like for the next couple of months we don't really have too many catalysts. So I think that, there, like you said, like there aren't really any profits to be taken here. So that might lend credence to the fact that we don't get a reversal tomorrow, and then we see continued sell pressure as we head into the weekend. But um, that's enough macro pontification for one day. What do you say we dive into some specific assets?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It's funny. I was talking to my dad a
Yeah,
bit
what's he up
just
to?
before. He's doing good, chilling. But he was just talking to like some old clients. Because like what he would be like a salesman or like exchange relations he'd manage. So he'd talk to the traders and satisfy what they need or whatever. And he's talking to some of them today, and he's like, "Yeah, my hair. This one guy, August was the first month he lost money in 10 years, and this other guy, high frequency trader Akil, who had just has made tens of millions of dollars over the year. Monte, I've mentioned talked
Oh,
to you
I
about
know
him
Akil.
before. He
Balling.
quit. Like he quit. He's like the markets suck. I'll come back. I'm spending time with my wife right now. I'll come back when it makes sense. And the last thing my dad said is you can't win all the time. So yeah, I mean, I do think there are some interesting trades, but yeah, this it's just like the seasonality. This whole pre-halving year, especially in Bitcoin, it's like I don't know what equities are going to do. It's tough with COT. There's not a lot of marginal buyers up here,
Right.
so I think patience is just kind of
Yeah.
warranted this year.
Do you think that lends any credence to like a bullish dollar thesis? Because like I feel the same way. Like I'm having a hard time making sense of this market. Um, and I don't want to like speculate on it, but the dollar seems to be like the place to go if you don't want to speculate. What do you make it? Do you think there's any possibility that we see the dollar make new highs on the back of the fact that this market just is so horrible and no one wants to trade it right now?
I mean, I think regardless of how horrible a market is, people always want to trade it for better or
That's true.
worse, of course. But I mean, obviously for worse. But yeah, I think the dollar. If you just look at the positioning, like no one's really long. Like if you look at historic levels of where large speculators have been, they're not long relative to commercials. I mean, it's basically just been a short covering rally because a lot of people remember when Druckenmiller was talking about how he wanted to short
Yep.
Powell and Janet
Yep.
Yellen, and then everybody must have just piled on. But he closed that and continued to ride Nvidia and set a really good year. But like when the thesis change, or at least the tape tells you something, it's important to listen. And I think that's kind of been the story this week as well with like Nasdaq and the big equities. It's just like the tape is kind of telling you to stay away. There's just no. This is different from the way up. The way up was like you could see the firmness in the price action.
Right.
Now there's just not the bids coming in at support that. And I'm not looking at the order flow. I can just tell by looking at the price.
Yeah. Yeah. You have any specific examples that you want to bring up in terms that are like showing that sort of price action or any specific assets in general that you're watching as we head into the end of the week here?
Yeah, for sure. I can talk about a couple things. But yeah, I want to highlight some COT first. So Nikkei is one we have been talking about. I mean, what's interesting to me is that we are at close to all time highs, kind of coming down here. Chimp trend line that Monty loves. So yeah, I mean, look, it's holding. There's been kind of a rejection so far. We'll see if it ends up. But with the dollar going up with risk off and equities, you've seen a lot of buying in the Nikkei this entire week. That's the reason for its outperformance amongst major global indices. So what I'm thinking is perhaps if it was the largest leader on the downside, or excuse me, largest leader on the upside, if we have downside price action next week, it may be the strongest to fall. And when you look at this, you see. This is kind of a reflection of what we saw in the dollar too. It's just like large speculators short covering
Yeah.
or bidding up, and then you have retail who's long. So that's like pretty good qualification for me for what I look for in terms of a short. So
I really
yeah,
like that trade, CJ. I saw you talking about it in the Discord with some members of the community, but I did go ahead full disclosure, and take on a short position in the Nikkei, just because of everything that you mentioned here. Third lower high. You have that COT positioning. I think in like how often do we see long specs or large specs covering and retail just remaining long? Like that is the perfect signal that this is putting in a top, especially when you can combine that with the DXY. So I think that this is a tremendous opportunity to either, short the Nikkei or long the dollar. I think both are valid plays here, but short Nikkei, I mean, a 1.3 reading on the COT oscillator, retail longs still in the market that have yet to capitulate, while the large specs have basically already gotten out, telling us that there's not going to be a whole lot of buy pressure to propel this thing any higher. So I really like this from a technical setup, and it's a trade that I did go ahead and enter this morning myself as well.
The funny thing that I really like about this trade, and well, I shouldn't say like about the trade, but just the setup and the asset in general, it's so funny watching this because this was such a nice uptrend. I didn't get to participate in it, but some people did. But look at how short, large specs were they were shorting into new highs as the trend was making new highs. They just kept increasing shorts. The moment it topped is like basically when all the shorts decided, okay, I'm going to start covering now. This is stupid. And then we just went straight down. And they've been getting long, or the shorts have been covering kind of this entire time. So it's the same type of idea with ES and NASDAQ. They're at a very similar point where it's just like all throughout this time you had, short covering, and those were forced buyers. You don't have them in the market anymore.
Yeah, ZL taking it on the chin today. For those of you that are members of our community, this is one that we were watching. Stop loss was hit, so exited this one. But I mean the COT oscillator back to zero. What do you see when you take a look at this chart, CJ?
So I mean, I actually do think this is an interesting short if this is like the top of this little echo bubble in soybean oil. However, I do think there could be, I am open to the idea of like the commodity super cycle if we do continue seeing very risk off price action. But I mean, we can talk about that some other time. The point is that I like to see is just looking at retail and large specs. They were getting really long all through it out this area, and then you kind of had like a failed cup and handle. And to me, one of the biggest indications that this one was sort of weak and still kind of is its inverse correlation, or I should say correlation breakdown between the other soybean products. So like, for instance, soybeans, I guess they're all performing pretty poorly. Anyways, Nikkei, heating oil, we'll see. I don't know. Did we talk about cotton at the beginning of the week? I hope somebody caught this.
Yeah, I do believe you started off the week talking about cotton. Where are you at on it now that we've had a few days of price action following that analysis?
Yeah, I mean, this one's been it had been in a short setup. You saw the peak go up, 2%, and retail and large specs just getting really long into this one. Then you had the rejection from like the range high, and let me just map out some levels very quickly. So yeah, I mean, we've just kind of ping-ponged around this range throughout the past year, through all of 2023. So, I mean, there's not that much reason for me to believe that this would be any different. And seeing that there was a lot of crowded longs at this level that they were unable to break out, maybe it's a failed breakout, and now they're going to be trapped and forced to puke those positions. So the risk to reward to the downside or trading to the bottom of this range, I think, is still pretty decent.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I didn't take this trade, but I do wish I certainly wish I had.
I think that should be about it. Let's see. Yeah, I think
Kelly,
that. I mean, Coco maybe it might just keep consolidating though, but this is another one that's just been back to levels of zero, where it's just been very very crowded. You might see an interesting day one of these days where you just wake up, there's a very large flip, and then we go limit down or something like that. That's how typically a lot of these crowded trades will work. Like I think this was a limit. Yeah, this was a limit down day.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean that's basically what I'm looking at. Not a whole lot. I'm trying not to trade a whole lot this week, and just kind of want to wait for a little bit more volume.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I just want to bring this up real quick. The funding rates of crypto across the board. Lots of shorts entering the market today, and that's not surprising given the start of the day for the equity market. Right? We have equity markets opening down. People think that, hey, this is a good chance to get short. But what I will say is that, if you look at something like Solana, like the funding rate has been completely reset after what had been a very turbulent 24 hours of price action, tons of liquidations, and we're kind of back to almost break even. But you can see there are still some shorts in this market, but for the most part, we're pretty neutral right now. If you go into the more obscure altcoins, then you or like the farther down the list you go, the more heavily shorted they get. So be wary if you're shorting something that's like a high beta asset. In terms of like shorts, I think based on what we're seeing today from the equity markets, I think you can enter, some shorts with relative confidence that you're not going to get squeezed out because they aren't that crowded. However, I think a lot of people may enter the market with that same thesis, thinking like, oh, the equity markets are down big time. Now is the time to, enter into the shorts, and that's a good way to get burned. And to CJ's point, there's just not a lot of liquidity, so you can get trapped in a position very, very easily in these market conditions, and that's something that is just a horrible feeling. You're in a position that's in profit, but you can't get out because there's no one to take that exit liquidity. It's happened to me in the past, and it's always been in similar market conditions when we have equity markets selling off hard.
That's a
And
pretty liquid chart there.
yeah, it's like the only liquidity you're really going to find is in Bitcoin and ETH. Beyond that, Solana showing decent signs of liquidity as well on the back of that news. I think that I'm going to take so CJ sent like a funny meme of like a bell curve, and it's like, low IQ people think that the Solana and the Visa news is bullish. The middle of the bell curve, those people think that it's means nothing. It's just a payment rail. It's nothing. Um,
Do you
and
mind if I
then
explain the context of the meme a little bit? It's just like,
don't overthink it.
yeah. I mean, that's all.
Yeah,
But more specifically, like, I understand the news or whatever it could be meaningless. It may not be meaningless. Either way, if it is, it really doesn't matter. All that matters is the market's reaction. I mean, Dogecoin pumped in 2015, 2016 because their logo was on the Jamaican bobsled team. Like, what does that? I guess it's kind of bullish, but it materially it doesn't a month after the fact nobody remembers.
yeah,
So it doesn't matter what the news is. It just matters about how the market reacts to it. I guess unless it's like Bank of England type shit or something.
yeah.
Sorry to cut you off. Actually, last thing, Fade Money rang the opening bell at the NYSE this morning. Isn't that interesting? They've
Oh
doomed us
boy,
all.
that's a horrible omen.
Mark the date.
Yeah, Jesus. Phoenix says, remember when people thought that the Soul phone was bullish and going to bring Soul to new all-time highs? Yeah, I'm pretty sure they didn't sell any of those. I don't even think they even ever hit production. I don't know. But what
Arthur
I
Hayes
will,
had the best. He had this tweet. He was like, "She used to call me on my soul phone because it's been completely wrecked. Like, yeah, nobody.
yeah, it's wrecked. But what I will say is this is going to be a popular short play amongst retail traders in my mind, because you always hear that saying, buy the rumor, sell the news, and we had the news event, and I think people are going to try and short this. You can see this red line here is a stop loss from a trade insight that we published that I published in the Discord. I am still going to remain long Solana because I think there is a chance that people try and pile in on the back of negative price action, and we see it squeeze to the upside. I think that is very plausible. I think this will be one that people try and target in terms of an asset to the downside. So I'm remaining long. I got in back here, so unfortunately I'm underwater slightly, but I just bought spot, so I really don't care. And if it dips below this level, I'll cut it with really not much concern. That being said, I do think this is one that could plausibly squeeze to the upside because there's going to be a lot of people trying to short it. They're going to be like, oh, the news is behind us. That Visa news was nothing. It was, what do they always say on the news? Nothing burger. It was a big nothing burger. Well, that may be the case, but if enough people pile in short and get squeezed out, it drives price up, and that in itself can be the catalyst. I don't care about what it does for Visa. I don't care about their partnership. What I care about is how people are positioned and how they're going to react following this news.
Well said, my friend. Well said. I do want to speak to your point though about potentially seeing a pump based on how negative these funding rates are.
Yeah.
A lot of commentary or just a popular YouTube headline. I should have made this one of our YouTube headlines to get more views. There's always tomorrow. It hasn't come yet. The death cross. The death cross is coming. 200-day and 50-day crossing.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people will take that to be very bearish, which I understand. There's definitely periods of time where, bear market, you're making death crosses after a large uptrend. It's usually not good. However, I think when you get either a golden cross or a death cross, usually in the short term, you see opposite price action of whatever the title assumes, because we all know moving averages are a reflection of previous price action. And if you were to look at like the time in the cycle of where we're at, I know it's not identical, but we're about 200 days to the next halving. We've made our echo bubble peak. We're coming down. And in 2019, it was interesting to see during this death cross, things look very similar to how they are now from a technical perspective. And, you just got a really big squeeze. So that's, I don't think shorting here is really the move in terms of crypto because of a squeeze like that, especially with funding rates. If they get really extreme, maybe they won't. I don't know. Maybe there's not as many shorts left just because people aren't trading. But either way, if we do get some type of squeeze back into the moving averages like this, I don't know if I'd expect anything really that substantial from Bitcoin. I think it's kind of safe to assume, first half of the year up, second half of the year sideways down.
Yeah, that would fit the Bitcoin, agenda that we typically see following halving years and years leading into halvings. So we shall see. We shall see. Yeah, Visa. I mean, the news doesn't matter. Sol got a prediction here. Sol doesn't reach top 10 by December 2025. I agree with you. I think that we'll see a new list of assets in the top 10 by 2025. That's just the way.
Hey, I thought that about ADA. Do not underestimate the power of cults.
That's true. That's true. ADA is.
I'm not saying buy it, but I just mean like, it's funny how retail will really bag hold. It might not make an all-time high. I don't think it will. Especially, I don't think it'll ever make a new all-time high versus BTC. But
No, no. Something new and shiny will come along, and people will invest in that instead, just like they did with Sol, AVAX, and Luna, in the previous cycle. So something new will come along, and then it will probably die too, and then life goes on.
something will, I mean, something useful will come out of this industry. There already is plenty of useful stuff and also plenty of scams, but the innovation will continue, I think.
I agree. And don't get me wrong, like I'm long-term bullish Bitcoin and ETH. I hold both for the long term. And if we see, like we had one member of our call talking about Bitcoin to 15K. If Bitcoin dips below 20K, like I am breaking out the dry powder and I'm opening fire like it's the Battle of Bunker Hill. There's gonna be so much dry powder flying.
Till you see the whites of their eyes.
That'll be me holding steady at 20K until you see a dip below 20K. But yeah, I mean, listen, anything below 20K, I am loading up. I am not even kidding. Like I would get so bullish, and I think that'd be a tremendous buying opportunity. So I hope he's right. Because I'd gladly pour all my USD into Bitcoin below those levels. I know that's not.
I don't know about this, Monty. This looks pretty dangerous. Seems like a lot of casualties.
Someone commemorate me with a beautiful piece of art like this. Me just getting slaughtered by the shorts. Oh, anyways, I think that's about all we got for today.
Phoenix says he's selling his cousin's house. How's that possible?
You got the deed to your cousin's house. All right, you're getting out. Bitcoin's at 15K.
Listen, I got this couch.
Sleeping on the floor feels nice sometimes. Unless you don't have any furniture, then it's then it's shitty.
Yeah, it just reminds me giving the classic speech to like family members, like, "Oh, in 2 years, trust me, Bitcoin's gonna be." But yeah, whatever. That was like 2018 days. Anyways, let's wrap it up. We've been going on for quite a while.
True.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. It's a great way to support the channel. Hope you guys enjoy the content on a daily basis, and we'll catch you back here same time tomorrow.